I'm Tammy Dennett, ex-Target workplace bully turned communication coach. But it wasn't that long ago when I lacked the skills, the tools, and the knowledge to ditch the drama, confidently handle difficult conversations, and create better relationships. Fast forward past many failed attempts and lessons learned, and you will see the business that I have today. One that is helping others just like you to find the confidence and peace knowing you can change your circumstances one conversation at a time. I created the Dissolve Workplace Conflict Summit to give you access to industry leaders who are sharing simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies so you can do the same. If you are an employee, supervisor, or an employer and you are looking to access the top strategies to successfully dissolve conflict without damaging your relationships, then you, my friend, are in the right place. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Shawn Huber. He is a certified high-performance coach with the High Performance Institute and a certified hypnotherapist. The founder of Structured Freedom, a transformational coaching company that guides people to connect their mind and body together for becoming a healthier person. Shawn believes that having a plan, I'm going to say that part again. Shawn believes that having a plan, people have the ability to achieve their goals and dreams, as well as the freedom to live the life that they deserve. Today, we're going to be talking about your internal argument. Welcome to the show, Shawn.
Thank you for having me here. And this is a great topic, a great way that you can change everything about yourself personally and in business by just creating ways in which you're engaging with yourself and looking at things from just changing a few words. And the interesting thing that I've found by doing this kind of work is we are our worst critic. We beat ourselves up constantly. And when it comes down to things like that, we're like, I don't need someone else to reaffirm what I believe in myself. And I think a lot of times when we're in a negative thought process, we look for the things that are going to say, yes, you are in a negative thought process. So the what if, and I call it the what if all the time. What if it goes wrong? What happens if this doesn't work? What if this happens? Like, what happens? What if it did work? What if it got some amazing things? And the thing that's interesting with the conflict that's internal is the way in which we're talking to ourselves, not just the wording itself, but the tone of voice that we're using internally and the tone of voice we're using externally. So tone, as you say, what if, your voice raises, you feel really good about it. When you're talking about, oh, what, this is not going right, this is not, the face changes, the tone of voice changes, your posture even changes. So it's interesting. Think about walking in on a Monday morning into work and you see this one person slumped over and you already know something's going on. Subconsciously, you're picking it up. Then you're like, so how's it going? It's okay. You're like, oh, really? Anyone who ever says it's okay is just, I really don't want to get into this conversation with you. And again, where's the time and place for those conversations to be had? Because if I'm worried about someone being irritated, I'm concerned, which then takes me out of the task at hand of which I'm at work for. So how does a person decide to show up better? And that's what I really got into because, back in 2003, I got diagnosed with cancer. The funny part was I was reading Lance Armstrong's book 2 weeks before I got diagnosed. I'm like, wow. And I actually went to see his doctor. And I had testicular cancer. The surgeon who found it was actually a friend of mine. And it was Christmas Eve, and we go in for a CT scan because, he's the head of the department. He's like, I'll get you in and out in less than 30 minutes. We'll have results. I'm like, so this is how it really works in medicine? He's like, oh, yeah. Everything else is bureaucracy. I'm like, okay. So I came back. He came back in 30 minutes later and said, hey, where I thought it was just like a little bit? He goes, you're 3C, you're almost stage 4 cancer.
Wow.
Here's the protocol. This is what you're going to do. And I'm like, okay, let's find the best doctor possible. So we went with Larry Einhorn, who worked with Lance Armstrong. And I got up there, and because of them working with this type of cancer, they were very straightforward, blunt. We're going to kill you to cure you. And I wanted to know what else I could do. So I had and was into a lot of Eastern medicine, holistic medicine. So basically, I was like, okay, what do I have control over? I can take supplements, certain supplements on empty stomachs, from digestive enzymes to probiotics to balancing out my pH, because cancer doesn't like to live in that change my diet up, get rid of simple sugars, anything with hormones in it. That stops cancer from. I'm like, okay, what else? And I started looking into doing a lot of visualization work. And you're like, okay, read a book. This person pretended that their body was eating it up like Pac-Man, and then every time they go to the bathroom, they get rid of it. So I'm like, okay, I can do the Pac-Man thing. So I started visualizing it. And when I went back for my final, okay, you don't have cancer anymore, they go, we want to sit down and talk with you. I'm like, okay, what's this about? Your basically case has changed the protocol on how we're treating this cancer. We want to know about the supplements. We want to know about your eating habits. What else did you do? Because you have zero scar tissue where you should be full. I said,
Wow.
well, I did visualization, which being a personal trainer, that helped out greatly for motivating people so they could see themselves changing. Because a lot of times we can only see as far as we get rid of the pain, not where we're moving forward. So when you start going outside your normal comfort zone, and a lot of people through life have been in situations they weren't necessarily putting themselves into when they were younger. And that's where I love the hypnosis that I do, is figuring out where those filters came from. How, like if mom and dad are arguing and I'm used to that, but they get physical, then anytime I hear a husband and wife argue or a woman and a man, I'm thinking something physical is going to happen. Is that true? No, it's just true for what I was learning. So it's also understanding, why am I triggered by certain things, by certain people I work with? Is it real or is it not? So my quick suggestion for anyone, if they're stressed out going to work, is just in the parking lot, or you're online now, I mean, everyone's virtual,
Mm-hmm.
just to close your eyes for a minute and do a quick, easy release technique of stress. And you just close your eyes, take a couple deep breaths. As you're breathing out, you just say release to yourself. And then it could be from a minute to 5 minutes. If you want to go longer, 15. Then decide, how and who am I going to show up as? Because here's my big thing. I want to know how you value the action you're taking, but I also want to know the attitude that goes with the action. So when you're like this, okay, I'm going to walk in, it doesn't even have to be a stressful meeting or a presentation, it just could be a normal day. I'm going to sit down, and how am I going to show up to be the best employee to see how many people I can serve and help out? I walk in. The same thing when I'm leaving that environment, I'm going to become, a husband, a wife, a brother, a sister, a parent. How am I wanting to show up now by changing that hat? And that's just a simple way. And in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, you can do techniques where you're touching your fingers and letting go. It's called a trigger mechanism. It can be all different types of things. But what you're doing is just becoming aware.
Mm-hmm.
And when you become aware, you can stop yourself from going too far.
I love that. Just that, such a simple thing to do is just to pause for a moment. And as you
Yep.
said, take in a few deep breaths. And as you let it out, you're saying the words release. Is that what you had said?
Correct.
Yeah. And so to do that even just a couple times, just to kind of get your attention away from what am I walking into, to just being present in the moment, and then asking yourself, how do I want to show up?
Yeah, and it stops you from, I call it the spin, because it's not necessarily downward or upwards. You just start spinning, and you need something to throw the brake on, or a disruptor of some form. And you can use it in all different types of ways, especially when you're in business. If the conversation goes off to a tangent, you're like, oh, hold on, everybody take a deep breath. Okay, let's center back. And you're just disrupting in a non-negative way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of times that we become the victim, or become reactive to things. It's something stopped us. Mine was cancer. It could be a car accident. It could be an illness. It could be a nervous breakdown. It could be an autoimmune system thing going on. It's stopping us from doing something to pay attention. Now, being that we're very intelligent, well, okay, most of the time intelligent beings, you can bypass that inner talk. And that's when you start to get more difficult situations. So, because of knowing how you talk to yourself, you have some control of that inner voice, that inner child. There are things that do work with it, can manipulate it, be it positive or negative. Gut health is huge right now. And it's been huge when I went through cancer, but everyone was like, don't you have to take just one of those things that have 50 billion? How do they know I have 50 billion? I'm like, I don't think anyone really counts them. We're just going off of something here. And they made it like, okay, ha ha. And I said, listen, Certain times when you take things on empty stomach, they work differently than you take it when you're eating. Now, granted, a probiotic helps digest food, but if there's no food and the digestive enzyme protease goes into your bloodstream, it attacks the negative proteins, the cancer cells, the bacteria, the virus type stuff. That's science. That's not me being a doctor or prescribing anything, but that's how these things work. So and I work with a group that we help prevent veteran suicide. And we started people with probiotics, digestive enzymes. They're like, why am I feeling better? 90% of your serotonin, your feel-good hormone, is made in your gut. We see now that IBS, Crohn's disease, all these things are happening more and more in our digestive tract getting bad. So those things can help greatly. Drinking water, being dehydrated, you can have an anxiety attack. You drink water, it goes away. And people are like, what? If you're freaked out, drink some water, relax, do some breathing. I mean, it works. It's amazing. Also, vitamin D is not really a vitamin, it's a hormone. So if we're low on vitamin D, we can feel erratic, off. Hormone levels. I think everyone should know their blood type. I think you should know what your triglycerides are, your cholesterol levels, bad and good, your sugar levels, and then the testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, and also cortisol. An easy blood test can check all that stuff. And this is what I found. And I did a quick interview with a buddy of mine because he was wanting to have children and they told me I had 0% chance. So I said, really? Another challenge accepted. Created my own protocol, got some supplements, talked to my doctor. They had one medication I was taking. My wife became pregnant in about a month and a half of doing this, but because of being on testosterone, I had to come off of it. And I was a walking zombie. And people think testosterone is just a male hormone to make you sexual. No. Clear thinking, energy, your metabolism, all that is controlled by testosterone, and women even have it. So my wife gets pregnant, and the doctor's like, you got to stay on this for 12 more weeks just in case she has a miscarriage. I'm like, okay, I can do this. Call my parents up. Hey, you're going to be grandparents again. They're like, did you get a new puppy? Because I was given 0% chance.
Yeah.
And if I was to believe that, then I would never have tried. If you start to believe in certain things, people think we can manifest our thoughts into things. People pray for things to happen. Words and actions together can do some amazing positive things. And you've seen out there how negative they can destroy people too. So the big thing about having this communication in the workplace is realize that you have no clue what someone's going through. And if you really want to ask a question, say, hey, let's take a minute, we'll have a conversation. Looks like you're a little off today. Mm-hmm. You just talk to them as a best friend, because the more you can trust people and the more that you understand how their personality works, the more you can give the way they receive, and the more that you will gain because they know how you receive. So, they've got the love languages out there. They've got all these things about people, their personalities. The truth of the matter is, it's great when you start speaking to someone who's like you, but like for me, sometimes you can't get a word in. And then you get the people who are these investigators, and they're just sitting back, pausing and listening, and they're taking in the information. And I think it's so interesting that when you take a breath, you can sync with those people, because there's always something in common you can talk about. And the work that I've been doing with clients, just to see, how are you bringing in a team member, someone to do something for you, or are you actually really getting to know that person, because they're going to know everything about you. And again, old school business is like, oh, you don't make friends, you don't date people. I'm like, listen, you're around people at work more than anyone else. You're going to find things that you have common interest in. Just be aware of certain topics and know what their manual is for the reasons they have people not date, or certain things they don't want brought up at work. Understand and talk to HR about it, because you got to know where you stand before someone is going, oh, I didn't like that conversation, or they're into this. And again, everyone, I wouldn't call them sensitive, but they're just hyper aware of things going on. It's the same thing at home when you're on your computer. I mean, you have to control that environment as much as you possibly can. We've seen these Zoom outtakes before. Yes, they're interesting. And I think it's just realize what you have control over, make the most out of those. And if you're not sure, then go learn it. There's so many great people out there. My whole thing is this: hesitation is where the hurt and where the loss happens.
Mm.
We take action, we follow through, we have an amazing attitude about it. And guess what? You can always course correct. There may be exceptions to this. There usually is no right or wrong answer. There's a better one or there's a
Mm.
worse one. So it's just a matter of figuring out. And what I learned so much about this is if I feel good physically and I'm working on my mental state to be positive, I sell more, I take more time off, I engage with people at a deeper level, because a lot of people in my industry don't know what coaching is. And I've done this for over 15 years. So I'm back in the old days, old school life coach. Like, we didn't have some niches or whatever they called them. So it was interesting to watch how this has evolved. And what you're doing is asking a lot of questions to really get down deep why someone does what they do. And if they don't know, I found hypnosis is a great way to get people there quicker.
For an individual kind of assessment.
Right. And when I did it, like, this one person, they had this hang up on money. That's what they thought. And when we took it back, it was self-value.
Mm.
So they went back to a situation that they weren't necessarily happy with. It was negative in a way to them. But I said, okay, let's look at it from this standpoint. Let's get rid of the emotion. You were taking deep breaths then. I said, okay, now visualize that that was a learning point that got you to where you're at right here. So without that, who knows where you would be?
Mm.
Realize you had no control of that conversation or that outcome. And now be okay with recognizing it, but the emotion connection to it is gone. They come out and they're like, I feel weird. I'm like, what do you mean? Because every person does it differently. I'm not specifically giving them orders. I'm looking for why they wanted to do what they wanted to do. And they create this outcome before we even do the session. In that, with everything else, with the coaching and the nutrition, people just accelerate in life in general. And they do freak out because they've never been there before. And that's normal. I mean, I would love to tell people that even the best of the best still get nervous. They still have self-doubt once in a while.
Of
The
course.
difference is they work through it.
Yeah. So you've covered a lot of ground. I want to circle back to a few things here.
Sure.
I was making notes there. I didn't want to interrupt because you're in a flow, and I didn't want to stop that because you were just in a flow. So we're talking about internal arguments, and I've kind of connected it to a few things. So there was the self-talk, internal argument about what you think is going to happen and what could potentially happen, and that negative talk about, well, if I do this, then something bad's going to happen. But what if the opposite was true? Is that part of that internal
Yes,
argument that we're working through? Okay.
definitely is a major portion of it.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to consider. Is, you're right, we are conditioned to look at the negative first. We definitely we find comfort in preparing for the negative as opposed to joy in preparing for the positive, which
We don't want to be let down.
yeah, right. It's easier to be prepared for the letdown, because then you go, oh,
Right.
I knew it was going to fail. Right.
Exactly.
But I also heard that I wrote down judgment, in that when you said you don't know what everybody else is going through, you shared your very personal story about going through cancer diagnosis, being told that they're going to kill you to cure you. So that's the treatment of cancer is going to be so harmful that there's really not a positive prognosis.
Right.
Never going to have kids. And so there's all these judgments. Like, you come into the workplace, nobody knows what you're going through, but you have a little downward expression in your tone and in your body motions, and people can judge you for that as becoming less friendly. And so to take the time, ask a question to see what's going on with people, rather than have this internal dialogue that says, oh, well, he doesn't like me today, I must have done something wrong.
Exactly. And the coolest thing, which sounds weird to say it this way, is when you catch yourself, you're like, aha, I got it. And you smile for a second. The downside is you got to ask permission from other people to catch it in them. So you can't go out like, oh, so you're being negative. That's the biggest thing, is when you create this self-awareness, you want to have everyone else see it too, but you have to ask their permission.
Because it's so amazing. You want to share it.
Exactly. And that's that's the hardest thing, is always trying to find something positive. Is it hard? No, it's just a choice. And that's
Mhm.
when people are like, it's always this or it's always, I'm like, is that's an infinitive always. There's exceptions to everything.
Right. It
And
takes no less effort to think a happy thought than it thinks to take a negative thought.
and you also have to, when you're creating, if you're creating the workspace, hold accountable the level of engagement and how you want people to engage. And if they're not aware of it, you have to teach them how to do this. The one big thing that shocked me years ago, I said something to a really good friend of mine. He goes, "Hey, I appreciate you doing that." I'm like, "Hey, no problem." He goes, "Don't ever tell me that again." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "No problem. You go to any fine dining restaurant, any nice hotel, any nice car dealership, and when you say, 'Hey, I really appreciate it,' they say, 'You're very welcome. Can I do anything else for you?'" It feels completely different. When you say no problem, like, why would it be a problem? Are you devaluing yourself or me? And it's just us picking up things around people. And when we start to change, it can be difficult for the people around us because they know something's happening.
Yeah.
You're never leaving people, you're just moving yourself towards another area of interest that is benefiting you and the people around you.
Yeah. And that's really important. I love how you phrase that. It's like you're saying the same thing differently, but it lands with such a different impact
It
when you
does.
just shape the words differently. And so I want to circle back now because one of the things you highlighted was choice, in that when you were given all of these negative outcomes, cancer, the cure is going to kill you, you're not going to have kids, you had some really pivotal choices to make. And those are stressful moments. And
Oh,
what
you're
I
second guessing yourself constantly.
right? Like, absolutely. I mean, these are literally life or death situations. So first of all, you had to make a choice. So that was that internal argument. You had to make a choice for you, for your family, for everybody else impacted. But second, what I wanted to come back to was, and you had touched on this, was the health of your body. And I think this is so important to just circle back on, because when we are under stress, sometimes we don't recognize it. We don't know the long-term effects. Like, personally, we're not thinking about it. All of a sudden we're not sleeping, and then we're not eating, and then we're feeling anxious and become hypervigilant, and everything in our body is out of whack. So I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the nutrition, the supplements, and how you can best position your body to help with those elements of workplace conflict. So why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So if your stress level is so high that you can barely maintain it, but you're okay, and you went, I'm not saying anything's wrong with people being diagnosed, and you went somewhere, you're like, "Hey, my blood pressure's up, I'm stressed out. Here's something to help you." I want to know why I feel that way, not this thing is just getting rid of the symptom. So I did a lot of research into why. Honestly, it's hormone imbalance and gut health. And we know when we don't feel good, we really don't want to engage with people. We just want to be quiet. But we, over the years, get used to handling that kind of physical and mental stress. And it's okay until something else happens that throws us over the edge.
I would even just interject and say it's not that it's okay, it's almost like socially acceptable and expected that you should
Yeah, it
handle
is.
this.
And that's, I've been accused of being too happy. I'm like,
I love
isn't
it,
that
by
a,
the way.
isn't that a bad thing? You're too happy, you're too positive, you're too outgoing. I'm like, what's the alternative? And I think misery loves company. To break free, you're breaking not only free of that, but you're taking yourself to a complete different level. And it's scary because you go, I can actually feel this way.
Mhm.
You have to understand how to break the pattern to which gets you there. And when I've worked with people, person I worked with, it took her 3 months to get there at first. And when we were done, it took her 3 minutes.
Wow.
So she would feel it, but recognize it, take care of it, and move on
Hmm.
because it didn't serve her in any way.
Hmm. Oh, such an important lesson. It doesn't serve you in any way,
No, it doesn't. But
right?
again, it's surrounding yourself. It's not just thinking. It's, what are you reading? What are you listening to? Are you taking time for yourself? My big thing for my clients, what is your hobby? Huh? I'm like, no, that's what you do for a living. What's your hobby? And they're like, I don't have time for that. I said, really? You don't have time. Every person that has worked with us in our company has made more money taking more vacation because they get creative, they get recharged, they get to show their personal side with pictures on social media where they're going. That is what creates health. That naturally gets your internal organs working better, takes stress off you mentally, drops your blood pressure. I mean, the best and easiest thing to do is go walk outside barefoot in the grass and see how you feel. It's the
Mhm.
weird. I've had people do it in snow. They're like, this is weird. It feels great. And if you're worried about what people are thinking, who cares? Just feel it.
Yeah,
Like, it
just be
is
present.
amazing to get healthier, but at the same time, if you get 10% healthier, you stop because you're like, that's good enough. And I'm like, why does it have to be just good enough?
Mm,
Why can't it be amazing?
I love that. I
Can
love
I
that.
maintain amazing? Well, when you get to that portion of your life where it becomes the normal, then you go again. People are like, when is this ever going to stop? If you're doing it right, it never stops. You're always learning, you're always challenging yourself, you're always doing things to make you better. And then when something comes up, you have the tools to handle it. Not saying you're going to be great at it every time, but you know how to pull yourself back up without hitting the bottom.
Hmm.
And we can see this in all these different programs, from Alcoholics Anonymous to eating disorder clinics, helping people out. What are they doing? They're disrupting that person's pattern. They're getting them away from an activity that gives them problems. And what do they do with it? If you get rid of it, you got to put something there that's going to be positive. Otherwise, something else negative shows up. That's my belief, anyways.
Hmm.
So I always challenge people to do things that they've never done. And they're like, this is fun and challenging. And my big thing is this: you're not going to be happy once you get there. You need to be happy and choose to be happy as you're getting there. Because if not, you're going to get to that goal and be like, oh, now what? Oh, next.
And it's usually never as joyful as you think it's going to be.
Oh,
Like,
no,
you know,
never.
I won't be happy until I make $1 million this year. I won't be happy until I find true love. And then you get there and you're like, I'm not as happy as I
But does it
thought.
still work? Does it still
Yeah.
work?
All right. So, speaking of challenging and changing our behaviors, we know that our nutrition and our gut health, as you mentioned before, has an impact in our daily resilience, I suppose, in order
Mhm.
to continue to foster our relationships and to deal with conflict in the healthiest way. You have something for our audience. It's the 10-day detox. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
So it's not your normal detox. And the reason I mean, it could be called a cleanse. What I did for myself when I had some surgeries, so I wanted to make sure that my digestive tract, once I was given all those antibiotics, would be healthy as possible. So I got rid of gluten and dairy because those can cause inflammation. And that's just, and even when people aren't allergic to it, it can cause inflammation. It was just proteins and gluten-free food and some good fats for 4 days. And then the day 5 through 10, it's just fruits and vegetables with a bunch of probiotics, digestive enzymes, a lot of water. And there's no amount you're supposed to not eat. You can eat as much as you want. I just stay away from avocados and bananas because high fat, high sugar, and no dried fruit. It says it all in there because I had people question me on this 3 years. And the result that people get, they're like, why? The last one, no, I don't have to take Tums. I'm like, why were you taking Tums all the time? Because I get acid reflux constantly, kill me. I couldn't sleep. I'd burp because my stomach's down. I go to the bathroom regularly. I don't have this acid reflux. And he goes, and I lost 10 pounds and I'm not like all puffy. I said, it's not a weight loss, but I've had people lose 25 pounds because they were so shocked. I had a type 1 diabetic do the program. And when he was done in 10 days, he goes, my blood sugar has never been this good since I was diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
He had to turn down his insulin pump a ton. His stomach wasn't swollen. He had energy. He was just shocked. And I'm like, they're like, why does this happen? Because you're becoming aware of what you're putting in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And I give you no restrictions except fruits and vegetables. You can grill them, cook them, just don't fry them. And it's just, and then when they're done, they're like, what do I do next? I said, introduce proteins and fats slowly. And you figure out then if you're interested in taking your journey to another level. What this detox does is it allows your intestinal tract to heal, builds up your flora in your gut with all those good probiotics and prebiotics, and then it allows your digestive tract to absorb nutrients the way it was meant to be. Because you could eat completely healthy But if you don't change the bacteria and the inflammation, you're not going to absorb that healthy stuff.
Mm.
So it's interesting why certain people eat certain things, they gain weight. Certain people eat the same thing, they don't gain weight. It's all to do with your digestive tract, how long your body holds on to nutrients and how quickly it gets rid of it.
That's
So I
fabulous.
started using that, and it helped me out. It helped everyone who's used it.
I think that's a fabulous offer for those who are looking to combat stress, conflict, tension from a different angle, where they're focusing on their body and their mind first, so that they are in the best position to move forward into those relationships. So thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything you'd like to add before we close out our conversation here?
It's just great that you're holding this topic in this symposium, because a lot of people are just looking to check a box off, check another box off. And what we know is everything's related, everything's connected. So make the most out of it. And I'm looking forward to listening to all the other speakers that are coming on and getting some information from them. And I, thank you for having me on here. And I'm looking forward to spreading this knowledge, this information to everyone out there, because the more we have, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, and I do appreciate you bringing a perspective that no other speaker has brought, and that is a little bit more about the mindset and the nutrition piece, the healthy gut. So thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And that's an official wrap on this session of the Dissolve Workplace Conflict Summit Speaker Series. Now be sure to connect with your favorite speakers by clicking on the link below and taking advantage of the free resources that they are sharing with you, so that you can dissolve your conflict without damaging your relationships. Now be sure to head on over into the Facebook group Dissolving Workplace Conflict and give us your favorite takeaways from today's session using the hashtag Dissolve Workplace Conflict. I can't wait to see what you've learned.